Are you ready to hear an inspirational hero tale about one of our four-legged friends? My name is Kim, and this is Harry Hero Tales. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 7 of Harry Hero Tales, Animals to the Rescue. I'm your host, Kim Hagel. Today is a packed show. I've got an update for you, and I'm also going to share two hero stories, one in particular about a hero named Buford. First, the update. You may remember if you listened to Season 2, Episode 2, A Hero Named Peach, that I announced that I had adopted a new little rescue named Owen over the holidays. During that episode, I shared that I had sent off his DNA to Embark and find out if he was a Boston Terrier, like the rescue organization I got him from thought he was. I can tell you that this is the second Embark test that I've done, and it's been 10 years since the first time. So a few things changed, but they also improved a few things. First thing I noticed was the results came back a lot faster than they did 10 years ago. So I was grateful for that. They sent me updates and let me know the status and where it was in the process. I didn't have access to that 10 years ago either. So that was really an improvement on the process. And I had thought it would be 6, maybe 8 weeks before I got the results. Well, I can tell you that they came back in about a month, maybe a little under a month. So probably half the time than I had waited 10 years ago, which was amazing. Just like before, they sent you a link, you log in, and it shares the results. So just like last time, it did have the breakdown of the breeds and an overview of the breed history, very similar to what I had seen 10 years ago. It also gives you the family matches still, like I had mentioned, and thought was pretty funny because a lot of the dogs are these purebred dogs, and suddenly they're matched with an interesting mix. So when I see those purebred dogs in the database, I do always kind of laugh and wonder if you have a purebred dog, why you're sending it off, but maybe you're unsure and you want to double check that the dog you thought you were getting is what you were getting. But he did have a lot of purebred matches in his ancestry. So when I was able to view Owen's results, there were some pretty big surprises, believe it or not. And that's why I will say again that I've enjoyed both experiences with the Embark test. And I think it's worthwhile, especially if you know you have a mixed breed, but you're not really sure what breeds those are. I highly recommend it. And to me, it is definitely worth the price. So on to the results. Not surprising. I think anyone that looks at him, and I don't know why he's hiding his face right now. I think he's dying to get out of the chair, but when you look at him, you can tell Owen is part Chihuahua, and that was top of the list. His body and size, when you look at him, just jump out as Chihuahua. And Embark tells you exactly how much he is of every breed. So for Owen, he is 33.8% Chihuahua. You can dig into the ancestry and see by parent, grandparent, etc., how much of Chihuahua is in there. Both of Owen's parents had Chihuahua mix in them, so neither were pure. I had to go back to great-grandparents on actually both sides to be able to find purebred Chihuahua. So it was a little bit in the distance for Owen. The other revelation, which was not too much of a surprise, was Boston Terrier. Owen's coloring is a perfect representation of the typical Boston Terrier with the white and black look. And I can see in his ancestry that once again, both of his parents came from Boston Terrier mixes. What was surprising was his results that he was actually only 22.4% Boston Terrier. Based on his coloring, I'd actually expected it to be a lot higher. All right, so you might notice in the video, Owen's moved. He was getting tired of his high chair. By the way, this is a very adorable mounts to the table high chair that I was hoping he would enjoy, but I think for too long a period of time, he was not happy staying in there. So we're going to have him next to me now. Now, here's where the big surprise started. Owen's top breed is not Chihuahua. It's not Boston Terrier. Owen's top breed is Pug. Owen is 37.8% Pug. And once again, looking at his ancestry, both parents have Pug mixed in, but it's pure, not too far back in his ancestry. On one side of the family, it's actually at a grandparent level and beyond. And then on the other, you only had to go back to a great-grandparent, and it was pure Pug and beyond. So that explains why his top breed is Pug. There is one last surprise, the last result I did not expect. While only a very small percentage of 6% in his DNA, I was stunned to find out that Owen is also part American Pit Bull Terrier. A great-great-grandparent was an American Pit Bull Terrier mix, and looking at Owen, I see 0 American Pit Bull Terrier, but it's in there. One thing about Embark that did change, or I forgot you didn't get unless you chose to get the health version of their kit, is how old he is. Apparently, only when you upgrade to the health background and results will you find that out. So I'm not exactly sure how old Owen is. We estimate he's probably around 10, maybe 11. So just FYI for anyone that gets the standard DNA test for Embark, you don't get the results on estimating the age. You can upgrade after if you want to, but I chose not to because he's doing well. He's very healthy, and I think we're fine with estimating it at 10 or 11. Thank you for joining us in embarking on What is Owen? All right, so before I get to the stories that I was planning to report on today, I do have 2 hero stories, but I'm going to add a third in here. And it's because it popped up on my phone this morning. And at this point, it's a little over 24 hours ago. Very near where I am. A Robertsonville, North Carolina man was rescued. He ended up being airlifted out of this area, eastern North Carolina, to, I believe, Chapel Hill, to a burn center. He was rescued by his dog. Dog's name is Cookie. And there was a fire that I believe they said on the news might have been started by a candle that was left burning and unattended. I don't know if that's been confirmed, but that is what I heard on the news, which is very unfortunate and scary. Middle of the night, dog starts barking, wakes him up. They both get out. Cookie is doing fine. The owner of the home and the dog is named Ronnie Beecham. So Ronnie Beecham was living in a house, I believe they said on the news, was built sometime in the 1800s. The fire spread quickly. About 3 a.m., fire crews arrived. Unfortunately, what they showed on the news this morning, the house is leveled. There's nothing left, but they both survived. There is a GoFundMe. His niece, I believe, Stacy Beecham, has started a GoFundMe. The description says, "Help rebuild Uncle's life after house fire." So if anyone listening to this would like to show your support, or obviously in honor of the hero that helped save Mr. Beecham, Cookie, please see if you can go out to GoFundMe, find that link, and whatever you're able to afford and provide. Looking at the photos, it is a devastating fire. There's nothing left, and I think he's in a burn center. He probably is going to have a long road ahead of him, and anyone that can share any support and be there for him and for Cookie, I'm sure would go a long way to helping in that situation. But I just wanted to share that since it was very fresh as I was getting ready to record today. The amazing rescue that Cookie was able to do for his owner, who, according to the news, they are together quite often. They have quite a tight bond, and clearly it shows. So we hope the best for Mr. Beecham, and hugs to Cookie for your amazing rescue of your beloved owner. All right. So the planned stories that I wanted to share for you, I'll get started with those right now. So I'm going to share the story of two dogs that were fairly recent in the headlines. Now, one was all over the national news in the United States, and I believe the other went pretty viral around the world. So let's start with the viral story. This one comes to us from very, very far away in Australia. I have fond memories. I had a chance to visit Australia once. It's a long way to get there, but it's a beautiful place and some of the friendliest people that I've ever met. And this story is from a part of Australia that I didn't have an opportunity to get to. And it's a story that's about one of my favorite dog breeds. So while this story was recently in the headlines, you have to go back a little over a year ago to really start at the beginning. So in November 2023, Georgia Gardner and Josh Fishlock, a couple, well, they were on a camping trip in South Australia on the island of Kangaroo Island. Now, I've seen photos of this place, and it's nearly otherworldly. It's incredibly beautiful and full of beaches and also full of kangaroos, hence how it got its name. It is magnificent. Now, Georgia and Josh, they did not go alone on this holiday. They traveled with their 1-year-old black and tan dachshund named Valerie. On day 2 of their trip, the couple decided to go fishing, but they left little Valerie behind in a playpen. They wanted her to just rest and they'd be off fishing. And I don't know exactly the size of the playpen or the material, but what I know of dachshunds in my history, they are tenacious. They are stubborn. They get fixated and they will not give up. And somehow, if they're motivated, they can find their way out of a lot of things that you would not think they can get out of. Now, in one article I found, there were other campers nearby, and they saw her either getting out or she had already gotten out. Most likely she was probably already out. And they saw her underneath the vehicle, the family vehicle. Worried that she might get run over, they rush over to try to capture Valerie. Unfortunately, this frightened Valerie. These are strangers. They're big people coming at her, and she got scared and she ran off into the bush. They gave chase. She went farther back into the bush. They searched and notified the owners, who came rushing over. They start hollering her name, running into the woods. Did not find her. Kept looking. Their vacation is coming to an end. Multiple days have gone by. At this point, it's now 5 days. Zero luck. They had to make a hard choice. I can't even imagine what this would be like. They have jobs, they have responsibilities. They're terrified for their little dog on this island of whatever predators are there. But they had to return home. And I lost a pet for just a few minutes at one point, and I nearly lost my mind. I can't imagine heading back home 15 hours away, leaving my lost dog. That trip home and the nights that followed must have been torture. And there were no signs. There were no sightings of little Valerie for more than a year. And then something miraculous happened. Around November 2024, so this is 1 year after she disappeared, people started to see a little black and tan dachshund with a pink collar. And these stories reached the people at a nonprofit called Kangaroo Wildlife Rescue. This group took action. And this action taught me a lot about what to do when trying to locate a lost dog and what not to do. So anyone who, like me, sees a lost dog loose on the side of the road and you're terrified for the dog, being out near cars or whatever danger might be nearby, you want to rush up and catch it. And there are some tips that I'm going to share with you that can help you have a better chance of saving that dog. And trust me, I know it's going against your instincts, even when it's your own dog. But there are some important tips that I'm going to share. The Kangaroo team put up trail cameras and traps. Now, why trail cameras? They wanted to track her movements and see if there was a pattern to the places that she went, and were there places she returned frequently? Because it makes sense. If she did so, they'd be able to put the traps in locations they'd know she frequented. So now when I say the word trap, I know that sounds pretty harsh. I've seen photos of ultimately what little Valerie was in when she was recaptured, if you will. It was a pretty large pen or crate. It was filled with blankets, food, and water. But it was set up in a way that they could monitor, watching with these cameras that they had set up. And when they saw her enter and away from where the door was, they would be able to spring the trap so she couldn't get away. Now, they spent a lot of time locating and interviewing these witnesses who had said they'd seen her so they could learn more. But it wasn't a quick catch. They logged hours and hours and moved around, setting up all of these traps everywhere, ultimately traveling, get this, 3,000 miles to catch little Valerie. It's a lot of miles on an island. They even reached out to Georgia and Josh for old toys and some of their clothing to put in some of the traps, which makes sense because the scent, the smell might attract her. She might recognize it. And if not coming closer for the food, she might be motivated to come closer to their scent on these items. So with these trails of smells set out to draw Valerie into the pen or traps, the crew of Kangaroo Wildlife Rescue waited. Now, Valerie visited one pen pretty regularly, they noted, every 5 days or so. But she was always quick to rush in, eat, and run before they could spring the trap. A lot of times it might be middle of the night. Maybe they weren't watching. Who knows? But by now it was mid-April. Remember, they started getting reports of seeing her in November. And once they had investigated and they decided they were going to put up these all this equipment, it had been about 2 months or so that they'd been really actively trying to trap her. But finally, on April 25th, 2025, the stars aligned. Little Valerie went into the pen for a bite and a sniff, and the rescue staff were ready for her and were able to spring the trap. Valerie was no longer wandering Kangaroo Island lost. Now, aside from learning a lot about how not to rush up to a dog that's loose or lost, which scares them away, maybe even into danger, into the street, or calling their name and expecting them to just say, oh, okay, there you are. Here I am, and let's go. They don't respond that way. You also have to be careful when you've trapped a dog that's been lost for a long period of time and they're in a kennel now suddenly, because Valerie, she had been on her own apparently for a year. And they did not just rush up to the kennel to just scoop her up, as my instinct would tell me to do. In the articles I found about Valerie, there were a couple of references that I noted and went down the rabbit hole, quite frankly, because I found it interesting how they responded. And I'll get to what they did in a minute, but I'm just going to share with you what I found in these references in the articles about Valerie called the lost dog syndrome. So here it is in a nutshell. Lost dog syndrome starts with confusion. So you can imagine a dog gets separated from its family, and whatever the circumstances, maybe it isn't highly stressed, scary, but they pretty quickly, according to these articles, become disoriented. They don't see you. They don't really recognize what their surroundings are. Depending on the breed, depending on the temperament of the dog, can go into what is described as a basic primal mindset. They click in instantly. I'm alone. I'm not with my pack anymore. I'm not with the people who care for me anymore. I've got to find food. I've got to find water. I've got to find shelter. Very basic, very primal thoughts. They feel at that point, they only have themselves to rely on. They're worried about predators, and they may have been wired very socially, very friendly, very attached to humans, but their fear and anxiety makes it difficult for them to be approached, for anyone to capture them, stranger or family. I find that really shocking when I think about how my dogs respond to me, and I can't imagine, but when their mind goes into this fight or flight thought, they don't easily recognize. And when they run off, when they run away, as you're trying to capture a dog, strange dog to you, or maybe even your own dog that's been lost for a while, they don't see you as family. They see you as a predator. I've tried a few times to catch a dog that I see on the side of the road, and they panic. And now I know the reason why is because of how I did it. There are even some references to owners in these articles about the lost dog syndrome that find their own dog, but the dog runs away from them, not recognizing them. So your mind might think, well, wait a second, they know my smell. Why would, okay, maybe they're in this fight or flight mode, but why would they not recognize my smell and not have the fear reaction? So when it comes to lost dog syndrome, once that switch is on, no, they will not recognize you. They will not necessarily be responsive to your smell. And there's actually a scientific reason why. Dogs, like humans, are impacted by stress physiologically. Serotonin is a hormone that controls many of the body's functions like sleep, and this one is important, also short-term memory. So when you're in stress, serotonin is depleted in the body, and bam, dog can't remember. They can't remember where they are. They can't remember where home is. They don't know who their owner is. So when the owner approaches, the dog will only see them as an untrustworthy human or predator for that matter. This is important to know when your dog gets loose or outside of your fenced area, runs away from a park. Look immediately. If you find them quickly, they likely won't flip that switch and won't go into survival mode. Get help if you need to search a wider area. Let the neighbors know to be on the lookout. Even if it's a stranger that finds him quickly, they likely will approach others without fear. Surprisingly, in the articles I found on lost dog syndrome, it can develop over time or sometimes in just hours. Like I said earlier, it depends on the dog's personality. It can depend on the dog breed, experiences before they were lost, and perhaps what they encounter in the first few hours after they're separated. This can have a big impact on whether or not they go into this survival mode and they flip that switch. So finding them fast is critical. But I realize not everyone is lucky to find them quickly. But they actually can be found and captured. And once they're captured, the switch, that thing that has them in that survival mode and their very basic or feral mindset, it's still on. So here are a few tips to know what to do in that situation, because this is what the rescue folks did with Valerie. They did not immediately go rushing to the pen. I would want to rush in there and scoop her up and, are you okay? And all of the things that I think most people that are listening to this would want to do, but they did not do that. They were worried about her mental state. She had been lost on this island for more than a year at that point. She was expected to still be in survival mode. With the cameras on monitoring her, they watched her pace and panic a little bit after the trap had been sprung. But eventually, little Valerie just settled down, curled up on the blankets, ate some food, went to sleep. So later, having one of Valerie's owner's shirts on her, one of the rescuers, a staff member named Lisa, approached her in the pen very slowly. She was expecting to have to do the following. She would enter the pen, not make eye contact, sit down to keep her body low, less intimidating to Valerie, and then just wait. I've seen videos of online shelters with terrified, completely shut down dogs that cower in the corner, which is heart-wrenching to see. And the people become as small as they possibly can in those videos that I've seen. And the dogs respond by crawling into the corner, crouching down, trying to be invisible, not be seen, or sometimes they're aggressive. They can be growling. All of this is because of the fear, because of it can be lost dog syndrome. Who knows how long they were on the streets. And it can take treats, multiple visits, very calm, quiet, letting the dog make the decision, letting the dog relax. And you can almost, when you watch those videos, if you've looked for any of those on TikTok, some of the rescue videos that I've seen, you can almost see the moment that they flip that switch. And they amazingly choose to trust again, even if it's just a little bit. Well, back to our story about Valerie, it was not what they had expected. So she was up front at the pen as they were walking up, barking, responsive to them, coming towards her, excited, waiting for them almost, it seemed, the way they described it. They brought her favorite foods. She was very friendly, very responsive to the rescuers, and even allowed them to pick her up and snuggle. So after decompressing for a couple of weeks and having a full checkup at the vet, she was perfectly healthy, by the way, no issues. And just this recent weeks, if you search about the story, she's actually back home with her family. And they said she was heavier. Her owner said she had put on about 2 pounds. Now, on a little tiny dachshund, that can be a lot of weight. So from November 2023 to when she was rescued and back home with her family in spring of 2025, she put on some weight. So that brings me to some other information that I found doing some background search. And I'm sharing this part of the story because, yes, it is a happy ending. And it's astonishing that after more than a year being lost, this tiny dachshund was found safe and sound. End of story, bookend. She was lost. More than a year later, she was found. It's a great story. But there is speculation that popped up around the time they announced they had found her and she was about to be returned to her family. The new spin is Valerie was not actually lost all of this time. So the early news stories, when they started talking about, hey, there are sightings of this dog and they're trying to recapture this dog, and isn't it amazing? They're seeing, people are seeing this dog, and they started speculating. How is it possible after a year? And this is before she was actually recaptured. So they were speculating, like, how has she survived on her own? Was she drinking, water from puddles or rainwater or from a creek, or all the speculation. They were even speculating that she was consuming roadkill to survive. Now the stories are, they think some people or a particular person, I don't think they know exactly a person, but they're thinking at least one person, maybe more, have actually been taking care of her all of this time. So remember the traps that they were setting, and she was coming every 5 days or so? According to the research and some of these stories that have started to speculate that, this can't be exactly how this went down, they find that a hungry dog that sees that there is food in a particular area available would not wait 5 days to come back and check that location again. So they think that she's probably has food somewhere else, likely from a person. So far, no one has come forward to say that they have been feeding her or watching out for her for this whole year. The other thing that people are speculating about is Valerie's behavior in the pen and towards the rescuers after she had supposedly been out, lost dog syndrome, primal thoughts, and had that switch turned on, that how she responded was atypical of what you would see with a dog that had been loose and on its own the entire time for a year. So fine. So Valerie is not a textbook case in appearance anyway, how she responded after she was rescued. She's not a textbook case of lost dog syndrome. So what would the motivation be? What are they speculating the motivation is? Some people are speculating that the rescue organization itself was doing this in order to gain donations, because they were publishing a lot of this content, a lot of the efforts to try to rescue her. Now, to me, that seems extreme and unlikely. Did they ultimately want more people to be aware of this situation and what they were doing to rescue this dog? Sure. Were they lucky that it went viral and a lot of people were paying attention to what they were doing and they were able to get donations? Sure. They ultimately were successful in capturing Valerie. I think they deserve donations for what they did and the hours they spent and the miles that they traveled in order to capture this dog. And you can clearly see in some of the footage before she was rescued, she on the trail cameras that they were tracking and monitoring where she was going, she is loose. It is not like she's got a leash dangling behind her. She's loose and wandering around in a lot of different areas. So somehow she survived. Now, even if there were some people that were aware or saw a lone dog wandering around that they thought was cute and they'd put some food out, fine. it doesn't appear to me anyway that she was kept. It's possible that Valerie might have been kept early on and somehow got loose again. And that's when she suddenly popped up, because it was a year, remember, that she was lost. Nobody had seen her. Nobody had a peep about this little dog. And then, boop, a year later, she starts showing up. It's possible she might have been kept for that period of time and then was suddenly loose again. And it was months at that point before they actually captured her. So who knows? I still think Valerie, this little black and tan dachshund, is amazing. And she might have been a bit naughty for breaking out of her playpen and leading rescuers on a wild goose chase for a long period of time. But, she's a spunky, brave little thing. And I'm happy to be sharing her story because it's a good, happy ending. She's back home being pampered like she should be, like the princess she is, with her family. So congratulations to them. And I'm so happy for Valerie and her rescue. And the organization in Australia did an amazing job. And I don't believe the negative spin about this. I think it's all happy and a great ending. So I do think I want to check out this island someday. So I may find a way to get myself to Kangaroo Island and thank these folks for their hard work in finding Valerie and bringing her home. Now on to our second hero. This one went national. Major news broadcast nationwide. I saw it pop up on my news apps on my phone, social media. You may have already heard about it. It's such a great story. I still have to share it. On April 14th, 2025, an Arizona toddler was reported missing by his parents. Apparently, he had just wandered off from the home. So after reporting this toddler missing, the Yavapai Sheriff's Office responded. Now, the area of his home in Seligman, this is about 180 miles southeast of Las Vegas, and it's very, very rough terrain. I've seen it on videos, and we are talking bare desert, steep hills, rocky. It's not a place that you would want a toddler wandering around by himself. They formed a 40-member search party, and they started looking. For about 16 hours, nothing. Overnight, this is a little toddler in that space of just rocky, hilly deserts overnight. Weirdly, they get very, very cold. His parents must have been out of their mind. The next morning, a rancher was leaving his home and was nearing the end of his driveway, and he saw his working ranch dog, Buford. Buford is a 5-year-old Great Pyrenees and Anatolian mix. White and tan, he is pretty large. And his job on the ranch, Buford works at night, walking the ranch perimeter to protect the livestock from coyotes and other predators. So it wasn't a surprise to the rancher, Scotty Dunton, to see Buford resting at the end of the drive. He did this quite often. What was surprising was Buford was not out there by himself. He had company, and it was a little boy. Dunton had heard about the lost little boy on the news, and he immediately knew who this was with Buford. What was even more surprising, the ranch is about 7 miles from the toddler's home. He walked and walked 7 miles in the desert, mostly alone. For one part, he was not alone. Dunton actually searched out the tracks, and he was able to backtrack where Buford met up with the little boy. And it turns out they were walking together for at least a mile, but it's unclear from the tracks. It might have actually been longer than that. They may have actually met up sooner on this trek across the desert. Wherever it was, Buford did not leave the boy's side and somehow encouraged the boy to follow him all the way home to his ranch. The sheriff reported later that during their search, the rescue helicopter spotted not one, but 2 mountain lions along the terrain the little boy likely traveled. That is so scary. The boy's condition after being found, no injuries, perfectly safe. And Buford, his owner has described him as a natural babysitter, not only adoring kids, but on the ranch he watches over baby animals. And he's pretty chill and has a calming nature. It's not surprising that the little boy would have been calm following him along based on this part of his personality. And Buford, as he deserves, is being heralded a hero. In addition to being given an honorary search and rescue certificate and vest by the Yavapai Sheriff's Office, Buford earned himself a ribeye steak for dinner. So Buford, the chill and friendly dog who rescued a toddler from the desert and brought him home, is my kind of hero. While that only touches the surface of this amazing hairy hero, we have to leave it there for this episode. If you know of a great hairy hero tale and would like to hear it on this podcast, email us at hairyherotales@gmail.com. For more information on this program, visit our website, www.hairyherotales.com. That's TAILS.com. And follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and wherever you get your podcasts. This is a Southpaw Productions podcast, edited by Asaf Ahmed and produced and hosted by me, Kim Hagel. Opening and closing music provided by Mary Selvage. Be sure to follow her on Instagram at Selvage613 for her live show schedule, and check out her complete catalog of music available on Spotify, Apple Music, and more. And remember, there are four-legged heroes all around us. Who knows? You might even adopt one. I've adopted many little heroes from some amazing animal rescue organizations, and I've featured two on my website, the All-American Dachshund Rescue and the French Bulldog Rescue Network. If you are looking to rescue your next hero or would like to help with transport or financial support, I highly recommend both of these organizations. Neither are affiliated with this program in any way, but they both have my sincere gratitude and support. Thank you to all of the heroes of the world, and a special shout out for hairy heroes everywhere.